everybody. My name is Sandra Marin, and I am here with Shannon Lindsay, and we are very happy to be spending this time with you all at the Data Platform Virtual Summit 2022. Our session today is tips and tricks on how to prepare for exam DP-500. This exam is required to earn the Azure Enterprise Data Analyst Associate certification. This is a brand new certification, and we're going to show you some tips and tricks here. What are we going to see today? We're going to review the general path, like the main steps you need to do to earn this certification. And we're going to go deep. Shannon is going to go deep in exam DP-500, and she's going to explain what are the topics and the skills that are measured and what are the topics you should consider to review and to study. Then we're going to talk about, in general, what to expect when you present a Microsoft exam. And we're going to share along the way, and at the end, we're going to do a recap of all the resources that we have available on Microsoft to help you prepare for this and for other exams. So let's start. First, this is the Microsoft Certified Azure Enterprise Data Analyst Associate. We released the certification just a couple of months ago, so it's brand new, but we already have a lot of people, professionals that have taken the exam and have passed it and have earned this certification. This certification has one exam associated on it, so you only need to pass one exam. The exam is DP-500, Designing and Implementing Enterprise-Scale Analytics Solutions using Microsoft Azure and Microsoft Power BI. Shannon is going to go in a lot of details on exactly what topics, but you can see that the main technologies associated are Microsoft Azure and Microsoft Power BI. So what does a data analyst do? Data analysts and Azure Enterprise Data Analysts in particular, these are experts in designing, creating, and deploying enterprise-scale data analytics solutions. You know that for data analytics, you need to involve multiple technologies and you need to have different skills. So typically, an Azure Enterprise Data Analyst, the responsibilities for this role include advanced data analytics, and this means cleaning and transforming data, designing and building enterprise data models, and in general, incorporating and managing advanced analytics capabilities. And all this is managing the data, integrated with infrastructure, and for sure, all this applying development lifecycle practices. Now, the main skills measured by this exam are implement and manage a data analytics environment, query and transform data, implement and manage data models, and explore and visualize data. As I said, Shannon is gonna explain in detail each one of these skills and different topics that you should consider studying and getting practice before your exam. Before we get there, I want to share with you the exam page, so you can see what to expect. So when you come to that link that I just showed, aka.ms Azure Certs Enterprise Data Analyst, you're going to land on the certification page. This certification will show all the information that you need to understand what the role is and what the certification is, and who should consider applying for this certification. This page is going to be your main hub to find all the information related to the certification. One important thing, when you earn your certification is going to expire, and you will see in this page if it's time to renew your certification. From this page, you can also go to your certification dashboard, where you can see all the certifications and exams that you have passed and earned, and also all the certifications that are due for renewal. You will see here general information about the certification, and you're going to find also very valuable information on how to prepare, or the training that we recommend for this certification. So you will see two main types of training. You will see free online self-paced training, learning paths on Microsoft Learn, but you will see also instructor-led training. These are deep training delivered by Microsoft Learning Partners. So from here, you can actually go to each one of the training, to the courses associated, and you can find a learning partner to, in case you want to take a training with an instructor. You will see here also the certification exam, and from here you can schedule your exam once you are ready. And you will see at the bottom a lot of resources. So you will see a training and certification guide, you will see posters, you will see a link to your dashboard. This page, as I said, is the main page for you to understand what the certification is. And from here, you can go to the exam as well. Now, what do you need to do to get certified? So we recommend, it's not a requirement, but we highly recommend that you get the skills, and if you want to earn the Power BI Data Analyst Associate certification. Again, this is optional, it's not a requirement to earn the Azure Enterprise Data Analyst certification, but we highly recommend that you at least take that training, and if you want to also take the exam and earn that certification. As I mentioned before, and Shannon will go into more detail on this certification involves both Azure and Power BI. And the Power BI Data Analyst Associate has a lot of the skills that you're going to need to be an Azure Enterprise Data Analyst. So those two certifications relate very intimately and complement very nice each other. So this first step is optional, but we highly recommend it. Now, you are here, you are getting ready for exam. So this exam, as we said before, is DP-500, Designing and Implementing Enterprise Scale Analytics Solutions using Microsoft Azure and Power BI. So this is the step you are, and you're going to see in this session a lot of resources to help you prepare and get ready. One thing that we always recommend for Microsoft certifications, especially those of the associate and expert level, is that it's not enough just to take the training. You should have also experience in the role and experience with the platform. So as you are making your preparation plan, be sure that you are having access to the platforms, both Azure, both Power BI, because you're going to have in the exam questions and exercises that will demand that you actually know how to use the platform. So getting the training is not enough. We highly recommend that you get practice with the platform and on the role. So after you get ready, you are going to take just one exam DP-500. And if you pass this exam, you will earn the Azure Enterprise Data Analyst Associate certification. Now, let's go to the juicy part of this presentation. I want to introduce you to Shannon Lindsay. Shannon, please show our learners how to prepare for DP-500.
Thanks so much, Sandra. And thanks for such a great introduction to what is incorporated in our certifications. I think that you showed a lot of really great resources on the certification page that even I was not familiar with. So thanks so much for taking us through that. I am now going to jump into the meat of the certification, and we are going to talk about what are the actual skills that are covered on the exam. And we're going to go into them in depth. So here we go. As Sandra mentioned, we have 4 major groups of skills that we are covering on the exam and in the course. So we are talking about implementing and managing a data analytics environment. We're talking about querying and transforming data, implementing and managing data models, and exploring and visualizing data. So what you may notice when you look at this at a glance is that these skills look fairly similar to what is represented in exam PL-300, which is the Power BI Data Analyst certification that Sandra mentioned in the journey to the DP-500 certification. And what's really critical and what is a distinction between the 2 exams is the Power BI Data Analyst certification, PL-300, is the certification where you are using Power BI on a daily basis in a business to solve a problem. Those are going to be your Power BI users they're sitting in the business, they're needing to look at data on a daily basis, provide things quickly for the business. When you come to the next level, which is our DP-500 certification, this is really your enterprise analytics. We are talking here about integrating Power BI, Azure Synapse analytics, using Microsoft Purview for governance. This is really analytics at an enterprise scale. So if you're wondering which of those two exams is the right one for you, as Sandra mentioned, we would recommend starting with that PL300. Those are going to be your foundational Power BI skills. And then if you do sit in an organization where you're working in IT, or you're working really closely with the data engineers and the data scientists, you're a part of the data team, potentially you sit in IT, exam DP-500 is going to be the right exam for you. So these skills you can see here, they're relatively equally represented in the exam itself. And let's just take a look at what the skills are and how you know what to study. So here we are on the exam page on the Microsoft website. And what you're able to see here is, of course, similar to what Sandra was showing us on the certification page. You see an introduction, what you need to be able to pass the exam. And if you scroll down, here's what's really critical. You're going to see this skills measured. If you select download the exam skills outline, what this is going to do for you is show you that's a little too big, show you a PDF where you can see those 4 functional groups that we mentioned and the proportion of questions that are going to be on the exam. But what's even more critical is that you're going to see here every skill that you're going to be tested on. So if you are trying to study for this exam and you're using the self-paced learning materials on Microsoft Learn, as you go through those materials, you can cross-check with this list and say, okay, check, I understand how to identify requirements. Check, I understand configuring Power BI capacity. And this is just a nice little checklist so that you can know and be prepared for exactly what you are going to be tested on in the exam. So again, the way to get to this exam skills outline is if you come to the exam page on Microsoft Learn, you will scroll down, download the exam skills outline. Then again, similar to the certification page, you will see that we have a collection here, and this will help you with your self-paced learning. So these are all of the learning paths that are associated with the certification. And I'm going to jump back into the presentation. And I do want to mention, actually, we are available in the chat. So if you all have questions as we are talking, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat. Both Sandra and I are here, and we'll be able to respond to you. So looking at that exam skills outline and looking at the learning paths available on Microsoft Learn, you will see that we have divided those 4 larger functional groups into something that resembles a course outline. So we tried to organize these in a way that they logically make sense as you go through the course. So what we're going to start with is just an introduction to data analytics on Azure. And everyone comes into these exams, courses, certifications with different experience. And so we just want to make sure to get everyone on the same page. One other course that I would recommend that folks take a look at before you jump into this content, in addition to the Power BI Data Analyst course, is actually our Azure Data Fundamentals course, and that is DP-900. If some of the content in this Introduction to Data Analytics on Azure looks a little bit new or fresh to you, I would really recommend that you take a look at the DP-900 Azure Data Fundamentals course prior to jumping into this material. Then what you'll see is we have the material broken up into some learning paths that make sense logically and are grouped together in a way that flow nicely as you're learning the material. So what we're going to start with after the introduction is we will talk about using Azure Synapse Analytics as an analyst. And this certification is really interesting because it it dives into not only what are the skills that an analyst needs to be able to do analysis and to facilitate enterprise analytics, but we also talk about who are the other data professionals that you work with and how will you need to interact with them. So this Azure Synapse learning path, you may look at this learning path and say, I thought Azure Synapse Analytics was only for the data engineer, but I think what you'll see when you look at this learning path and you understand the skills that are involved, a lot of this is understanding how to query big data. So how are we using Azure Synapse Analytics to get data out for reporting and for analytics? The next thing that we'll jump into here is preparing data for tabular models in Power BI. When we're talking about data prep and also the next two learning paths, designing tabular models and optimizing tabular models, the key that sets this certification apart from the Power BI data analyst certification is we are really talking about data analytics at scale. We're talking about working with large data models, data that is refreshed frequently, perhaps real-time data, and we're really talking about how to build solutions that will scale. As you all know, Power BI is an incredibly powerful tool. It has the engine inside the Vertipack engine has incredible compression technology. It does great things with large data. However, if you are not building your models in a way that is optimized for that Vertipack engine, you're not going to get the performance that you want to see. So that's what learning paths 3, 4, and 5 are going to take you through. Learning path 6 is talking about data visualization techniques using Power BI. This is going to go a little bit above and beyond the basics. So it goes above and beyond just building visuals using the inbuilt visuals. It talks about using R and Python visuals. We're talking about designing for accessibility, data visualization best practices, making sure that folks who are doing some of the back-end modeling work also understand that we need to be able to communicate the results of that modeling using data viz. Then we've got learning paths 7 through 9, and these are going to take us into the analytics environment, making sure that everything you're working with in Power BI is integrated within your Azure data stack. We're going to talk about managing the analytics development lifecycle. So here we're talking about, potentially some DevOps, some CI/CD, and I'll explain that when we go into the modules themselves. And then finally, in the last learning path for this certification, this one I think is really special because we are talking about the role of an analyst in data governance. And as we have all heard many times, everyone that works with data should be a data steward. And Microsoft has really made great strides in the last couple of years with the introduction of Microsoft Purview. So Learning Path 9 is going to talk us through data governance using Microsoft Purview, and then more specifically, what the integration points are with Power BI and also with Azure Synapse Analytics. So let's move on now. And this is also another really special aspect of our courseware that I love to show off. And this is the fact that we have HandsOn Labs HandsOn Labs included in all of our learning paths and modules on Microsoft Learn. So there are actually two different types of labs that you will find in this course. And I'm going to jump into the browser and show you what those look like. But what you'll see is that for labs that are involving anything Azure, so whether they're Azure Synapse Analytics, Azure SQL Database, or Microsoft Purview, those labs are found on Learn. And what you'll see is it links out to GitHub. So it will look similar to what you see in this screenshot. And we'll take a look at that after I go through the next slide. So these labs are available, but they do require an Azure subscription. And one thing I'd like to mention about these Azure subscriptions is we encourage you all to participate in the Microsoft 365 developer program, or you can also use an Azure trial license through your employer. There are a few different ways to make sure that you have the required subscriptions for these labs, and then you can complete them in your own environment on your own machine, and it should be very simple. So this is the first kind of type of lab that you'll see associated with DP-500. The second type of lab that you'll see associated with DP-500 are labs that exist within the Microsoft Learn environment. And what they enable you to do is to launch a virtual machine. And on that virtual machine, you will be able to complete the labs. So in this case, it's really nice because you're doing the whole entire lab on a virtual machine. So if your personal machine doesn't have the compute resources necessary, or if you're on a machine that doesn't support Microsoft Power BI, you're able to jump in and complete these labs. And so just to be very clear, the labs that use a virtual machine in the DP-500 courseware are labs that are related to Microsoft Power BI, and they do not require any kind of subscription. So these are going to be very easy to access. One other thing to point out is that you do need to have an account on Microsoft Learn. These accounts are completely free. You can sign up for them at any time, but you have to make sure that you have that Microsoft Learn account to be able to access them. So I'm going to jump back into the browser here, and let's just take a look at what some of these look like. So the first thing that I want to show you is, and actually I'm going to back up a little bit here just so we see how to navigate this thing. So what we're seeing right now on the screen is Microsoft Learn. This is a module called Use Azure Synapse Serverless SQL Pool to Query Files in a Data Lake. So this is all about querying data. And what you can see as you scroll down here is that this module is a part of actually two learning paths. This learning path, Model, Query, and Explore Data in Azure Synapse, is related to our course. This is the DP-500 course that we're talking about today. Interestingly, the Build Data Analytics Solutions using Azure Synapse Serverless SQL Pools, that is a mouthful, that is associated with the DP-203 certification. And that is your Azure Data Engineer certification. So what you can see just by looking at this at a glance is that this Azure Synapse Analytics technology is used in more than one role. And that's intentional. We noticed that in the field, there are both engineers and analysts using this technology. They may be using it for different things, but we wanted to, show the synergies between those roles. And then we distinguish between, who is doing what. Okay, so now to get back on track, what I wanted to show here is the exercise. So anything labeled exercise on Microsoft Learn is actually a lab. So if you click into this exercise, which is just querying files using a serverless SQL pool, you'll see here that you have the opportunity to do this yourself. So what we do here in the labs is we say, okay, here's a hands-on exercise to do everything that you learned in the units before this in the module. So what you'll do here is if you launch the exercise, it will take you into the same screen that we showed on the slide. And this is where you're able to complete the entire lab in your own environment. And, it's pretty explicit here. Before you start, you need an Azure subscription. We link out to how to get that if you need it. And then we've got, scripting and all the things you need, setup files, everything that you need to complete this lab. So as you scroll through, you'll see, first you clone the repository, then you query data in the files. You use SQL to query CSV files. So some of this may look familiar to some of you. If SQL, for example, is not familiar to you, you are welcome to take a look at DP-80, which is another set of content that we have on Microsoft Learn, and that is querying data using Transact SQL. So that might be a nice place to start for you there. Here, you are able to copy and paste the code in. You'll see the result you're supposed to get, and it's just a really nice hands-on activity. But a reminder, you do need to complete this in your own environment. So that is our kind of one set of labs. The next set of labs that I'd like to show you are the labs that are associated with, I mentioned the virtual machine that you will need to use. So if you come to any of the Power BI modules, so this one, for example, is all about Power BI model relationships. And you come to the exercise. Again, it's recommended that you go through the content to get to the exercise. And from here, this will tell you that you've got a lab to complete here. So what you need to do is simply launch the lab. And just a quick reminder, you do need to be signed in to launch the lab. And what this will do is it's going to spin up a virtual machine. One just quick note, there is a limited number of sessions available. So if you come in here and you go to launch the VM and you get an error message or it times out, try again 5 minutes later. We haven't had many problems with folks not being able to access this, but there is a limited number. So if every single person watching this session goes to try to launch the lab at the same time, we may have some issues. So just a heads up there. The next thing that I want to show you, and I have this preloaded because it does take a moment for the machine to spin up, is that this is the virtual machine that will load once you are ready to work on the lab. And what you'll see here is instructions to sign on. And then you have all of the instructions that you're going to need for the lab in this right-hand panel here. So after you sign in, and let's just go ahead and sign in so you can see what to expect here. So after you sign into the lab, what you'll see, it looks exactly just like a Windows machine. It's running Windows 11, and it has the software that you're going to need to complete the lab. So you can see that this machine has Microsoft Power BI Desktop, it has Microsoft Power BI Report Builder, and it also includes SQL Server Management Studio. In some of the Power BI labs, you are connecting to resources in Azure, of course, and in some of them, you're actually connecting to a local SQL server that sits on this virtual machine. So everything you need to complete the labs is going to be here on this machine. You just need to make sure that you follow the instructions really carefully. But again, these are included right on Microsoft Learn. Oops, that's the wrong one. Here we go. These are included right on Microsoft Learn. So as you are going through the materials for this exam, so I'm actually going to go back up a couple of levels here. As you go through all of the content, you'll see the different learning paths. Within these learning paths are modules. Within the modules, that's where you're going to find the exercises, and those are your labs. Okay, so hopefully that covers off what we are able to do in the Learn environment and in your own environment with labs. So just one more recap. We've got any labs that require Azure resources, you are going to be able to bring your own subscription, complete these in your own environment using our scripts and our resources that we provide to you, and you're able to access those right through Microsoft Learn. The other type of labs that we've got here are your labs that include a virtual machine, and these you can just log into and complete as you see fit. They do have a time limit on the virtual machine. Most of them, I believe, are about an hour. So that's how much time you can expect to take these. And hopefully you have a lot of fun getting to practice this hands-on. So the next thing I'd like to do is I'd like to take us through the content in a little bit more detail. So I'm going to go through those 9 learning paths. And just a quick reminder, the 9 learning paths relate to those 4 main groups of skills that we were talking about that Sandra was showing in the beginning. Again, one more quick reminder, we are here. If you have questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat, and we are happy to answer them as best as we can. So let's get started here. Module 1, as I mentioned, this is your introduction to data analytics. This is going to talk you through what are we talking about when we say Azure Data Services for, quote, modern analytics. What does that mean? And we'll take you through what the Azure data ecosystem looks like. What are we talking about when we talk about the Azure data stack? And we're also going to talk you through modern analytics solution architecture. So what exactly do these solutions look like? How are they deployed? The next thing that we're going to talk through, or you're going to be able to learn via the Microsoft Learn modules, is understanding the concepts of data analytics. And this may be review for many of you. It also might be brand new. We do encourage you as you go through the content to give us feedback on Microsoft Learn. In the last module, there's an opportunity for you to rate the module and to give us feedback, written feedback. So we encourage that. And in this Understand Concepts of Data Analytics, you're going to learn how to understand the different types of data analytics and when you would use which type. So, descriptive versus prescriptive analytics, that type of thing. You're going to talk through the data analytics process. So really, this helps us bring everything all together from, working with your data team to requirements gathering to, dev, test, and prod environments to deploying solutions to gathering feedback, the whole, process that is undertaken when you're working with analytic solutions. And then finally, we'll talk about types of data and data storage. In this third module here, we're going to go through more, foundational knowledge for an enterprise data analyst. We'll talk about who's on the data team, what are the roles and responsibilities, what are the tasks and tools that you need to complete or to conduct analytics in the Azure environment. And then we're going to talk a lot about this concept of scale, because that's really the pin that holds this certification together, is the fact that we are not talking about ad hoc analysis. We're not talking about, analytics that need to be done quickly with a small data set that you need to use, because your boss has asked you immediately and you need to produce it that afternoon. We are talking here about enterprise analytics solutions that can scale. So when we're talking about scale, we're meaning that the volume of data may need to scale, that the velocity of the data coming in may need to scale. And this is really the connection between, the data analyst and the data team with this whole enterprise element. So module 1 is foundational. Module 2 then takes us into what do you need to do in Azure Synapse. And Azure Synapse as the analyst may be new to some of us, and that is great. That's wonderful. Azure Synapse Analytics is a relatively new technology. If you are fortunate enough to work on a team where your data engineers are already using Azure Synapse, of course, I recommend work with them, talk with them, understand how you can get into your organizational Synapse environment. Your data engineer can likely give you permissions to that. Otherwise, feel free to spin up a dev or a trial environment and get to work there. Synapse is really, really amazing. It just gives you the opportunity as an analyst to query all different types of files that are stored in one central location, and that you can actually query and visualize all inside of Synapse, but also using Power BI, because there's some really neat Power BI integration within Synapse. So within these 4 modules, the word module appears many times, but within these 4 modules, you will see we start with an introduction, and then we'll jump into querying files in a data lake. So we're starting with talking about serverless, so data lakes. We're also talking about querying using serverless with the Spark pools. We then jump into our dedicated SQL pool, which is a relational data warehouse, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, being, coming from the data world, the data universe. And here you're going to design a data warehouse schema, create data warehouse tables, and then in the lab, you're going to essentially query your data warehouse. Moving on to module 3, you'll see that we do have a little bit of a shift in technology here, and this is where we focus more on Power BI. Now, I will again remind folks that if you are working on modules 3, 4, and 5 in the Azure Enterprise Data Analyst certification, if you do not have the foundational skills of the Power BI data analyst, I would really recommend that you start there. And then in these modules, we go into a little bit more depth about what it is that we're doing with these data models. So the first thing that we'll talk about here is choosing a Power BI model framework. And what we mean when we say this is choosing between, import versus direct query versus composite models. We'll talk about what are the scenarios in which each of those are the best choice. And then there is a lab associated with that module. Next, we are talking about this word scalability again, which I keep referring to, and we're really talking about what's the significance of making sure that your models can scale. There is a unit on implementing data modeling best practices. There are also a lot of really good links in there to documentation. And then there's another lab in which you will create a star schema model, and that is connecting to Azure Synapse Analytics. And then finally, in this module, we're talking about creating and managing scalable Power BI data flows. And as some of you may know, we also now have something called data marts in Power BI. Those are still in preview, so content for that is to come. But we're really trying to build out this module for data prep in the Power BI environment. Module 4 here talks about designing and building tabular models, and this is tabular modeling in Power BI. Now, one just quick note, as I keep talking about tabular models, I'm kind of using air quotes as I talk here, is that those of you that come from a traditional database background, or you potentially are a data engineer, or you have a lot of experience with data warehousing, you may think, tabular modeling is a concept that you understand, but it doesn't solely relate to Power BI, and you are right. Tabular modeling can be done in a number of different tools. But here we are talking about tabular modeling in Power BI. So we're going to be talking about creating model relationships in Power BI. We have a module that goes through using DAX. Now, again, with DAX, that is the data analysis expression language, and that is the formula language that's used on top of the Power BI data model. If you are looking for foundations of using the DAX language, we have a great learning path on Microsoft Learn that is all 100% related to DAX. So go check that out and then come back and take a look at this module here. We will then go into creating calculation groups. Calculation groups are just, a neat way in Power BI to be able to essentially minimize the work that you as an analyst have to do when you are asked by the business to create year over year, month over month, quarter over quarter measures for 20 different measures, for sales, for profit, for sales margin, for all of those things. You can use calculation groups to just do a little bit of work and create essentially many measures under the hood. And there's a lab associated with that as well that you can practice on the virtual machine. So if you're interested in calculation groups, check that out. And then finally, we're going to talk through enforcing Power BI model security. So here we're talking about row level security, object level security, applying good modeling practices and making sure that your model is in fact secure. And there's also a lab that goes along with this one. And that is, the lab is called Enforce Power BI Model Security. It will take you through a row level security scenario. Moving along to module 5, here we are talking all about optimization. And this is really important. As an enterprise data analyst, this is particularly important because you may be responsible for working with some of the Power BI data analysts, and they may come to you and they say, why is my Power BI report so slow? Or perhaps you're working in IT, you're working in the enterprise, and the CEO comes to you and says, this report that is pulling, telemetry data from our website. It's taking 10 seconds for every visual to load, and I just don't have time for that. Well, obviously, that's not a great user experience. So in this module, what we're going to do is take you through how to optimize performance so that your reports both render quickly, so the visuals render quickly, also so that your refreshes happen quickly, so things don't time out. And then what we're going to take you through in this third module here is how do you use tools to optimize your Power BI performance. So if you have your own model, for example, and you say, I built this thing, and when I built it, the data was relatively small and it was really performant. Everything rendered in less than a second. It was super quick. Everybody loved the reports. They were great. Well, now your data grew and it doesn't render so quickly, and maybe you're having problems with it. This module, Use Tools to Optimize Power BI Performance, also has a hands-on lab. And this one I think is really neat because it takes you through using inbuilt tools like the Performance Analyzer in Power BI. And then it also talks you through using other additional open source tools like DAX Studio and Tabular Editor to take a look at your models. And those, work with other technologies as well. Those work with analysis services. So if that's something you're familiar with, this may be a neat module for you to take a look at. Moving into module 6, this is where we get into our advanced data visualization techniques. Again, this really assumes that you have those foundational skills, you know how to design and build reports, and we're going to take you into some more advanced concepts. And these are going to be concepts that you will need at the enterprise level. For example, in this first module, Understand Advanced Data Visualization Concepts, you're going to talk about creating and importing custom report themes, potentially a theme that you'll need to use across your whole organization. We talk about enabling personalized visuals, so making your reports easier to use and more customizable for your end users. You'll talk about accessibility. You'll talk about a little bit about the performance of the visuals and how to look at that with Performance Analyzer. The next module that we've got here is monitoring data in real time. This is a super neat module. It also has a hands-on lab. This is live on Learn, so please feel free to take a look at it. And this talks you through how to conduct real-time analytics using Power BI. So this is using things like the automatic page refresh function, creating real-time dashboards, and setting up auto refresh paginated reports. And then speaking of paginated reports, that takes us into our third module here. And some of you may have seen this module before. This shifted over from what was formerly the DA-100 certification, but this is really using the paginated report builder in Power BI to build and distribute paginated reports. Paginated reports are separate from reports that are built in Power BI desktop. And if you're interested in taking a look at that, this module is live on Learn, so please go ahead and take a look. We are now getting into kind of the management and governance or administration and governance of both the Power BI environment, but also just the analytics environment in general. And again, we really have to think about how this relates to us as data analysts. So we are not suggesting that you are the admin of all these systems and you have the power to be able to implement. But what we are suggesting is that as an enterprise analyst, you should know how to advise or how to work with your admins to be able to make sure that the environment is performant and secure. So module 7, really, these are some separate modules that are all related to administration of Power BI specifically. So we're talking about how do you provide governance in the Power BI environment. We talk about collaboration and sharing in Power BI, how to make sure that folks have the level of access that they need and no more. We talk about also monitoring usage. So this goes back to thinking about in the introduction module, I talked about what is the kind of analytics process, what's the analytics life cycle. And a big part of that is monitoring whether or not your reports are actually being used. So we talked through that here. We will then talk about, there's a whole module on provisioning premium capacity. When you are talking about enterprise scale analytics, if you want to get the performance that you're looking for with large format data, you're going to need to understand premium capacity in Power BI. And we'll talk a little bit through, what are the different premium licenses. It doesn't go into licensing specifically, but we're going to talk about, the premium licenses and the SKUs versus premium per user. Also, you'll see many things in this course about the regular pro license, but understanding premium is super important for this enterprise data analyst. We'll then talk about the data access infrastructure. How do you put things together? How do you connect things? How do you configure the gateway if you're using data sources that are on-prem? And then finally, automation of Power BI administration. We've got 2 more modules to go, so please bear with me. I know I have been talking for a while now. I guess, again, we'll just do a quick reminder to drop any comments or questions that you have in the chat. So we are now to module 8 of 9. We're talking about managing the analytics development lifecycle, and this one I think is really neat, fresh content. So here we are talking about the application lifecycle management of Power BI. So this module goes into what is ALM, or application lifecycle management. How are you going to manage source control with your Power BI reports? And then we also talk about designing a deployment strategy. Next, we have a module all about creating Power BI deployment pipelines. This includes a hands-on lab, so if this is something you're interested in, take a look. And then finally, we've got our management of Power BI assets. So again, this is really thinking about, from an enterprise perspective, how are you going to create Power BI assets that can be reused or used by other analysts, used by folks in the business who want self-service BI. So we're talking here about creating reusable assets. So things like reusable Power BI data sets that folks can connect to. We're talking about exploring your Power BI assets, in your data estate using the lineage view, so that if you have a core Power BI data set that you are enabling other analysts or business users to use, how do you make sure that if you make a change to something at the source that it doesn't break everything else? So using lineage view. And then finally, in this manage Power BI assets, we talk about the concept of managing your data sets using the XMLA endpoint. If the XMLA endpoint is something you're familiar with, that's great. If it is not, this is a really good module for you to get started with. The word sounds really fancy, XMLA endpoint, but really it's just a way for you to access your Power BI data sets using different tools. So this is a great module. I recommend that you check that one out. And last but not least, we are talking about our data governance. Again, I think this module is really great because it talks us through what is this Azure Purview thing and how does it relate to us as analysts. So the first, after the introduction, so I guess the second module that exists in here is really relates to us as analysts, because if you are new to an organization or you're trying to wrap your head around what data even exists in this organization, if the org is using Microsoft Purview, and actually, this should say Microsoft Purview. Yes, this should say Microsoft Purview. There's been a name change. But if we're talking about finding assets for reporting, you are able to search the data catalog in Purview, and you can find all the information that you need, and you can then connect to it right in Purview using Power BI. It is really neat. So I highly recommend taking a look at this, particularly since Purview is a newer product. This may be something that you have less experience with. There is a hands-on lab included in this larger module here, the data governance, and that is integrating Purview and Synapse. So I would definitely recommend taking a look at this lab. The lab is awesome. It'll take you about an hour to complete, and it really walks you through exactly how to use these two tools together. And so what you'll see here is that the Purview interface is available under the hood in Synapse, which is super cool. So with that being said, I have been talking for like 40 minutes now. I'm sure it's a lot. I'm going to pass things back over to Sandra, and we're going to talk a little bit about the exams.
Thank you, Shannon. Hey, you made us 40 minutes fly because this was wonderful, all these resources that you show. And I was so amazed about the labs. I didn't know we have those labs available. So that was wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Now I'm going to share with you all I'm going to talk about Microsoft exams and some things, tips and tricks that you should know, and what to expect when you are taking or presenting a Microsoft exam. So this is the basics of exams. So there are a couple of things that I want to share. First, how many questions are included in any exam? It varies. We have a large pool of questions available. Depending on the exam, you might get a number between 40 or 60 questions. And you may see, if you take an exam at different points in time, if you're taking an update, you may see a different number of questions. But if you take the exam and you don't pass it and you take it again like 2 weeks after, probably you will see the same number of questions. So this is a range. It's not an exact number. It varies per exam and per certification. Now, the questions the way we weight the questions to get your score, not all the questions have the same weight or value. Some questions are worth 1 point, some questions are worth more than 1 point. It will depend. But it's important that you answer all the questions. Even if you are not sure about the answer, just answer it. Take your best guess if you are not sure about the answer. There are no penalties for answering a question the wrong way. But if you don't answer the question, you may be missing points. You may be able to get the right answer. When you are taking the questions, some questions you can decide like, okay, I'm not going to answer this one, although we recommend to answer all the questions. But some questions you must answer and cannot be skipped. So you will notice because you cannot move forward to the next question. Now, an interesting suggestion is that if you're not sure about one answer, just mark that question, and at the end, after you have completed all your questions, you can go back and review the ones that you have marked, and you can take a second look, and maybe you can be more certain about the answer the second pass. So that's another recommendation. Mark the ones you want to review and go back if you don't want to review them all at the end. Now, how long does it take to take a Microsoft exam? These numbers are in general, but you should plan in total for about 3 hours. It could be less. In general terms, it's between 2 hours, 120 and 140 minutes. So 2 hours and 2 hours and 20 minutes to answer all the questions. Again, it's going to depend. If you are fairly certain about your answers, you probably will go faster than that, and you will have time to review, but that's the time that we give you to answer. Something between 2 hours and 2 hours and 20 minutes. That's the total time that you will have to answer the questions. But before those answering the questions time, you still have 30 minutes at the beginning for instructions and for comments and to navigate you through the exam. And then at the end, to provide comments on the questions and score reporting. So those 30 minutes are distributed at the beginning and at the end. And that's the time that we account for you to understand the exam, the instructions, and for you to give us feedback on the exam. That's very important to us, that you let us know about the questions and about comments about the exam experience in general. All the exams have a minimum passing score of 700 points. And Shannon showed you the different percentage for each one of the topics. So this is, sometimes you get questions for one topic or for another topic, but in general, when we weigh them all, you need to get at least 700 points to pass. So plan for about 3 hours maximum to take your exam, so you don't rush into it and you have time to sit, read your instructions, relax, answer your questions, reading through each one of them and getting the best answer. Now, when we talk about questions and answers, it's not only, there are multiple type of questions and multiple type of answers. So, and I will show you in a second some options. Not just multiple choice, not just single choice. Some exams even may have hands-on labs. So that's why it's important that you not only do the training, but you also have experience with the platform, because some questions might be, show me how to do it. Another, depending on the exam, also some questions may be case studies where you are presented with a scenario, and then you need to depending on the scenario, you may need to answer questions, more than one question. So it's important that is why we say that it's not only experience, it's not only taking the training, having experience with the platform, but also having experience with in the role, because especially these questions that are case studies will have you will need experience, because you need to apply common sense or experience or how you have done it in a real project in your work. Now, if you want to take a look into more details of what to expect from exams, go to this link, aka.ms/explore Microsoft exams, and here you will see a lot of information on what to expect depending on the different exams and how to take breaks and different questions. You can see videos. So it's a very handy tool to understand what to expect. There's another excellent tool, especially if this is going to be your first exam, or if you haven't taken an exam in a while. We highly recommend you to use this tool. It's the exam Sandbox. Go to this exam demo, and it's a real demo of the actual experience taking a Microsoft exam, all the way from, let's see if this open. All the way, so this is your actual experience. So this is an actual screenshot that you will see when you are taking an exam. So you can go here and it will help you navigate. And then what you will see here is the actual experience. This is the welcome. This is what you will see in the exam. And the other cool stuff is that you will see samples of typical questions, different type of questions. So you can get familiar. So this is one type of question, which is single selection. And then there is another one that is multiple selection. And you will see, I'm not going to show you all the different kind of questions, but there are 10 type of questions, and you can come here so you know what to expect and what kind of questions you might be having in your actual exam. This is a very cool tool that we recommend, especially for those newbies taking Microsoft exams, but also if you haven't done an exam in a while, just come and refresh the experience. It's very, very cool. Now, I want to talk also about a new resource that you will find on Microsoft Learn. This is brand new. We just released this a couple of months ago, and it's called the Exam Readiness Zone. And the Exam Readiness Zone is a section within Microsoft Learn where you will find materials that are created by Microsoft experts. So they provide tips and tricks and strategies for preparing for Microsoft certification exams. The resources included in this exam readiness zone are study guides that you will see details and recommendations on how to prepare for the exam, with links to the actual content on Microsoft Learn, something similar to what Shannon was sharing with us before. So you will see a lot of very interesting information. And they also have exam preparation videos. These exam prep videos are hosted by Microsoft certified trainers, and each video corresponds to a major topic on the exam. And during these videos, these are short videos, and the trainers will point out on objectives and especially those areas where we find that learners have more difficulty. So it's a very cool resource. And then you will have also practice tests. We create for every exam that we have available, we create practice tests in partnership with Measure Up, and then these practice tests are really cool experiences that will navigate you through a sample of questions. These are not the real questions of the exam, but it's a very, very similar experience to what the actual exam is going to be. So you can go and test and see where you are, and you can practice presenting a particular exam. Now, we typically release practice tests a couple of months after one exam is live. This exam, DP-500, went live just late June. So the practice test is not yet available, or it's going to be available within the next couple of weeks. So today you might not find a practice test for DP-500, but stay tuned and go check, because you might find it. Also, because this certification is brand new, we still don't have the exam prep videos available in the exam readiness zone, but keep checking, because we are releasing new exams there. I'm going to show you really quick what you are going to find here in the exam readiness zone. So you will see here the videos for multiple exams, and you can, because of course it's Microsoft Learn, so you can filter different things here. So for example, this one is for security, AC500, and once you go here, you will see the videos, the actual videos, but you will see also more information here and other recommended resources to prepare for each one of these exams. So stay tuned, because soon we are releasing more and more exam prep videos and resources for all the certification portfolio. So take a look every now and then to see what is new. Now, we're getting to the resources section of our presentation. So this is just basically a summary of what Shannon and I have already shared in the past minutes. Shannon talked about the exam guide, or the skills outline. She showed it to you, so this is the link to it. All these learning paths and modules that Shannon was discussing are available in a curated collection, the Level Up Azure Enterprise Data Analyst. So you can take a look, and there you will find all those modules that Shannon was talking about and showing you the labs. You can access them from this collection. And remember to build experience with all those labs that Shannon mentioned. Be sure that is part of your preparation journey, because as you saw, you may have some questions that involve asking you specifically what to do in certain parts of the tool. Now, if you want deep training, we have instructor-led training available. So we have the course DP-500, Designing and Implementing Enterprise-Scale Analytics Solutions using Microsoft Azure and Microsoft Power BI. Typically, courses have the same name as the exams. And these courses are delivered by Microsoft learning partners and are taught by Microsoft certified trainers. So if you want in-depth instructor-led training, be sure to find a Microsoft learning partner next to you and ask for this course DP-500. Now, one treat for if you are preparing for this exam, you may be familiar with the Cloud Skill Challenge initiative. And we have the Azure Synapse Analytics Challenge available in the 30 days to learn it Cloud Skill Challenge. So if you go and complete this challenge within 30 days, you might be eligible for a 50% discount of one Microsoft certification exam. So if you are thinking of preparing for this exam, you have all the resources that Shannon shared, all the resources here, and you might also be eligible to get a discount for your exam. So take a look at this challenge and check even more content. And of course, always refer to the services documentation on docs, docs.microsoft.com, because you will find a lot of content there. Now, to finish, I want to mention something that I mentioned at the beginning, and is your certification will expire at some point. All Microsoft certifications are valid for 1 year. So from the moment you earn your certification, it will be active for 1 year. And before that year expires or ends, you need to renew your certification to keep it active. The reason why we ask you to renew your certifications is because our technology in general changes so fast and so much that in order to stay up to date in order to keep pace with those technology changes, we want you to keep your skills updated as well. So we have a very simple certification renewal. And all you need to do is, once you earn your certification will be active for 1 year. Before that year, at the 6 months mark, you are eligible to renew your certification. So you have 6 months to renew your certification, and you must be sure to renew it before it expires. If you let it expire, you're going to have to take the exam again from the beginning. But if you renew with a renewal process, is very simple, and it's very simple because all you have to do to renew your certifications is to take a free online assessment on Microsoft Learn. If you take this assessment and you pass the assessment, you are done for another year. And then you have the second year ready. And again, at the 6 months mark, you will be eligible to renew again. So this is an ongoing process for as long as the certification is available. You renew the certification. You don't need to take the exam again to renew your certification. All you have to do is to take this online assessment. So it's very simple. 3 steps to renew your certification. Be sure that your Microsoft Learn profile and your certification profiles are connected, because that way, every time you come to Microsoft Learn, you will get a notice if your certification is due for renewal. And to take the online assessment, your certification profiles must be connected with the Microsoft Learn profile. It's super simple. Now, you can prepare for your renewal, because we say the reason for the renewal is because certifications, because the technology changed. So we have prepared a curated set of content to help you check what is changing in the technology. So there are specific learning paths and modules that will help you to catch up on what has changed since you took the exam the first time. Now, number 3, you take a free online assessment. It's not proctor like your original exam. It's free and proctor online assessment at your own pace when you want to take it. And you can do this test multiple times if you don't pass it the first time, but you need to be sure that you pass it before your certification expires. That's all you need to do, and then you are good for 1 more year. So learn more about certification renewals in this link, and don't forget to celebrate your Microsoft skills when you earn your certification for the first time and when you renew it. Let the world know that you are Microsoft certified and that you have the skills that it takes to perform in this modern technology world. And this is all we have for you today. Thank you very much. We appreciate the time that you have shared with Shannon and I. And we hope you are enjoying your Data Platform Virtual Summit. And Shannon, you want to say goodbye to our learners?
Yes, thanks so much. And we can't wait to see you over on Microsoft Learn.
Thank you very much. Goodbye, everybody.